You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to the Full Count Major League Baseball podcast, your local source for trending Major League Baseball topics, season analysis, fun, objective discussions, and up-to-date coverage of the Toronto Blue Jays organization from right here in the Niagara region. Here are your hosts, Brandon Caputo, Reece and Colin Ward.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of the Full Count MLB podcast. Right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your June 9th, 2021 edition, your source North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the beautiful Niagara region. You can find us on social media for updates and giveaways by following the podcast on Twitter at Armchair GM Pod, as well as this show's podcast. Make sure you're following it at AGM Full Count Pod. All our baseball updates are on there for you guys, so please go and give us a follow over there. And you can like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. And we're on many different platforms, including Spreaker.com, the free Spreaker app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer. And now, as you can see, for the second time on this podcast, we are in video form going forward on all of our episodes here. And make sure you hit that subscribe button, like my pillow says, to my left. And lastly, our beautiful user-friendly website, armchairgmsports.com, for all things regarding the network, including articles, podcast episodes, sponsors, and contributors. So wherever is most convenient for you to listen to us, we're on many different platforms for you. Please give us a like, a subscribe, and leave us a comment down below if you like what you see. And as always, I'm one of your hosts of the Full Count MLB podcast. My name is Brandon Caputo. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13_AGM with a Canadian Z. And I'm always pleased to be joined on the baseball portion of the network. First, he is the president of the Left-Handed Catchers Association. To my far left over there. It makes sense that he's on the left since he's a lefty. He is Colin Ward. You can follow him on Twitter at ColinWard_14. Doesn't have his glove today, but he was making the call to the lefty.
Yeah, I know. I should have brought my glove. Didn't think.
Colin, you're flying high like those Blue Jays. How you feeling?
I'm surprised you're ranked in the top 10 of that power ranking. I don't get that too much, but we'll see.
And last, but certainly not least, right in the middle there, he is, I guess, now the president of the Lou Whitaker for Baseball Hall of Fame fan club. He is the former technical producer at TSN 1150. He is Reece. You can follow him on Twitter at Reece. Reece, how your Tigers doing this week?
Hey, Colin's complaining about the Jays being in the top 10 power rankings. Right now, I'm out here. The Tigers are in the bottom 10 power rankings. So
and
reverse it.
And for me, the Yankees should be in the top 10, but they look like a bottom 10 team right now. But yeah, I can rant about that for, months on end. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for tuning back into the baseball podcast today. We got a lot to talk about. Obviously, the Jays news, them moving up north for the summertime, moving to Buffalo. Vladdy Guerrero's having a great season, and just general Blue Jays talk that we'll get into the first segment here. And the second segment, we're going to talk about just a couple of the teams that are kind of been rising and falling in the AL and NL, and some Marcell Ozuna news, which is very unfortunate for him and his baseball career, and just general thoughts on some of those teams that have been impressing the two gentlemen to my left there on the video. So with that said, let's get into our first segment today, and it's going to be on the Blue Jays. We usually finish off with the Jays, but a lot of news on the Jays, so we'll see how long the Jays segment takes us today. With that said, guys, let's take a look at what's going on with the Blue Jays. And first, let's start off with the Salem Field news of them moving up to Buffalo. And I actually got a pretty interesting stat here. Last year, opponent or batting averages for players playing in all of the 32 Major League Baseball parks, Salem Field actually ranked second behind Coors Field. So Coors Field had a 288 batting average, and Salem Field had a 277 with TD Ballpark in Florida for the Jays as well, coming in at 275. So What are your general thoughts, Colin, as somebody who watched the Jays a lot last year? Just what were your thoughts on, did you notice the balls were going out a lot further in Buffalo because it was a AAA park and just the dimensions of that park? What are your thoughts on knowing those batting average totals from last year and kind of how it might reflect them going back up again this year?
Well, yeah, when they said they were going from Dunedin to Buffalo, I really didn't think there'd be a difference in home runs. They were saying the ball was flying in Dunedin. Did they not see the Jays last year in Buffalo? I mean, you get the balls in the gaps there. You see a lot of home runs and just carry, hits the jet stream and goes. San Diego was like that in day games. The night games is totally opposite. Or it's the other way around. I'm having a blonde moment right now, but but yeah, the ball travels there. Vladdy loves hitting their opposite field. When you get it up down the line, you can hook it just over the foul pole. A lot of guys have hit a couple of those, but there really hasn't been a lot of cheap home runs, you could say, in Buffalo, which is interesting because like in parks like that, I mean, you see at Yankee Stadium all the time where a ball just goes over the first 5 rows in the outfield and it's a home run, right? Those are cheap ones. You don't really see that in Buffalo too much. And I think it's a legit home field advantage as well for the Jays going to Buffalo, just because you're going to have Blue Jay fans in the city of Buffalo, which is huge for the Jays, I think, to go to Dunedin, because Dunedin, a lot of the Canadians are home now, right, from spring training still. But that's nice to get that home field advantage back in. They can hit in that ballpark as well, which is good because they're a hitting team. They just need to learn how to pitch.
Yeah, and the pitchers need to keep the ball in the ballpark as well.
Not good.
But
Yeah.
With that said, Reece, the quote from Governor Andrew Cuomo announced a couple weeks ago that Salem Field will be back to 50% vaccination seating with normal seating and 50% vaccination seating with 6-foot social distancing. It will be the first time in 105 years that fans can watch Major League Baseball in Buffalo. There's the quote from Andrew Cuomo in the tweet there. So, Reece, what are your thoughts on the Jays going back to Buffalo and with the capacity limits and if they're going to actually have a home field advantage when they do play some of the teams that are kind of more popular in that area? But it should be better than what they were getting in Florida, which was most of the time they were outnumbered as far as fans go. But just in general, thoughts on the Jays going up there, what the fans might be like, and just allowing fans back in the building as well.
Yeah, I think obviously it's the better move in terms of actually playing in a stadium. Obviously Dunedin's a stadium, but with Buffalo you've got the extra levels. It sort of treats it like a major league stadium, more like unlike Dunedin where it's just got the one level, because as soon as you get into the third, fourth inning, that sun will go in behind the stands. And that really won't be a problem for the rest of the game, whereas in Dunedin, it's going to stick around. So,
like the fifth, sixth inning. It's crazy there.
Exactly. And that's what you get when you have one level, and it's just that's the way it goes. But, I mean, in terms of hitting, and I mean, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I really don't think it matters what ballpark he's playing in right now. He's just going to hit the tape off of the ball and destroy it. So, from that standpoint, I don't think it makes the biggest difference in the world. But from a pitching side, it's not, now you have to focus on keeping the ball down and limiting mistakes up and out over the plate and up in the zone. And that'll be a challenge for all of these guys. And I know they dealt with it, Dunedin, they dealt with it in Buffalo last year, but with the way the game's going right now, a lot of pitchers are trying to beat hitters up high with high velocity. And all you need is 1, 2, 3 guys to connect on a high fastball, and it's going to go in Buffalo. So, and New York, which that's just a given. that port, but
both sides now, it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of capacity, that's awesome. I saw that too. When I watched the first Jays game in Buffalo, I saw that with vaccinated and then non-vaccinated people. I'm like, you know what? Because the vaccine passport has been going around, the idea, I'm like, you know what? That's a good way to keep all the fans intrigued and get all the fans into the ballpark that want to. You have 2 sections. It makes the most sense. Can't sell out the stadium by doing that, but I think there's been quite a few Blue Jay jerseys in the stands. So from that perspective, I think they'll be okay. You'll get the Yankee fan coming up. You'll get the Mets fan coming up. All the AL East fans coming up, or AL East, NL East fans. So, yeah, exactly. So,
But I think it does help them that they're obviously playing in the city where their AAA affiliate is. So I think if the Bisons weren't the Jays affiliate, I think that might hurt them a bit more. But now, because they've been established now for a few years now, being the Blue Jays affiliate, that there are more Blue Jays fans in the Western New York area than maybe ever before. Definitely, they invade the whatever you want to call it, First Niagara Center, KeyBank Center, when the Toronto Maple Leafs come into town. But they're actually welcomed when it comes to baseball to have those Toronto fans come down and to watch games in Buffalo, which I'll talk about in the Sabres podcast. But with that said,
hey,
what?
Shout out to Buffalo there for the trolls about the hockey team there.
Yeah, there was some interesting signs.
Leafs.
Yeah,
that was pretty good. Yeah, Bill's Mafia. I saw some Jays Mafia shirts there.
Colin, I'm going to put some pictures up on the screen. You've probably already seen them, but for our YouTube viewers here, what are kind of your initial thoughts on this huge renovation that went on at Salem Field for the Blue Jays? And just, it's going to be great for the Bisons next year. They're probably going to have the best AAA, they're going to have the best AAA, I guess you could say, facility in the whole league next year when they go back, so that'll be great for them. But as far as the Blue Jays, they definitely did a lot of renovations to Salem Field, and just your general thoughts on what it looks like here up on the screen for the YouTube viewers.
It looks really nice. I mean, the only thing they didn't do is move the scoreboard. I've talked to a couple of guys that caught in that ballpark before, and the problem is in night games, the scoreboard's right there in the catcher's eyes. Like, the batter's eye wasn't very good last year, and they kind of fixed that a little bit this year. But the only negative thing about the ballpark is the scoreboard's right in the middle behind home, in front of home plate in dead center field. That's tough to catch. Reece, as you know, when you have the lights moving back and forth like that out of the blue on the scoreboards, those are tough to read breaking balls and stuff. But it looks really nice. Honestly, it already was one of the top ballparks in AAA. Now it just takes a step forward. That ballpark's spectacular, and they really had to do something to the ballpark. I mean, last year a lot of teams came in and complained, and I think that was a huge advantage for the Blue Jays. So the Jays, I mean, you look at their key guys, their core guys right now. Bo Bichette played there, Vladdy Jr. played there, Kevin Biggio played there. They know the ballpark. Danny Jansen. I mean, they already knew that ballpark in Buffalo, right? To where now it just looks spectacular. I mean, the bullpens, that's nice. I think Major League Baseball, I mean, they're trying to get away from all that bullpens, I mean, on the side of the fields in foul territory. I like that now they have their own bullpens there in Buffalo. I think that looks sharp. I think that helps a lot in having the bullpen like that. You need to do it for the fans, too, to get more seating, right? Last year, no fans that could do that, but the ballpark looks sharp. I mean, it's cool how they have the notes and stuff from the fans on the walkway from the clubhouse to the field. That's good. The weight room looks spectacular. It honestly, I was thinking about doing a Twitter poll the other day. What ballpark looks nicer with the upgrades, Buffalo or Dunedin? Like, it's tough to decide. I mean, Dunedin looks spectacular, but Dunedin, Buffalo, what they've done, I mean, it was already a nice stadium, and it looks even nicer now, which is crazy to think.
Reece, do you like the fact that the bullpens are actually in the bullpen? I'm always kind of the guy that, if I was a pitcher myself or a catcher, I wouldn't want to be on those makeshift bullpens on the third or first baseline, because I'd always be afraid that I'm going to get burned with a foul ball at some point, and it's not going to be fun. So are you kind of happy with the renovations that they've made here, and just, those bullpens being on the first and third or being off the first and third baseline in general, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I can speak to definitely catching in one of those bullpens, and a prime example of that in the IBL, the Toronto Maple Leafs, those bullpens they're not a bullpen. It is right where I catch. It is right next to the dugout. That's how close it is to home plate. It's not like it's further down the line. It's like right there. So if you don't have a spotter, then you're fearing for your life right there. I know that they've got a decent one. Yeah, they've gotten rid of it in Chicago. Although I think it's dumb where they put them. Obviously, it's tough to renovate that ballpark any more than they already did. But having the bullpens underneath the stands, I'm not really a huge fan of. But the one ballpark it works in is Oakland, and that's because you have 1,000 feet in foul territory. So that's the only ballpark it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, for the Blue Jays, it's just you're creating a good fan experience and a good player experience, because it seems like the Canadian government doesn't want to budge on letting the Jays come back, even though we're allowing NHL teams to travel in. And so that's MLB, Buffalo, the Blue Jays, everyone had to take a part in figuring out a way to enhance this experience for the Jays, for the fans, and just make the most of a really crappy situation.
Yep, absolutely. So hopefully this will be good, not only for the Jays for this year, but also for the Bisons moving forward, and just baseball in general in Buffalo. I don't know if they can keep the blue. I guess the Bisons do have blue in their colors, so I guess it makes sense that they don't have to repaint the entire clubhouse and the weight room. It's all going to be blue now. So some well-needed renovations to Salem Field. But with that said, let's talk about the players and the guys who are going to be playing in Salem Field. So Colin, I know you have a lot of thoughts on the Jays, and obviously the title of this video is, the home run derby that's been going on this year, and one of the players involved is the Blue Jays star Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who we've talked about many times on this show, is finally, taking that next step and being that guy that the Jays can look forward to as their next slugger. And we were asking for too much from a 20-year-old, but now that this is his third year now under his belt, we're starting to see some good things. So I'm going to put it up on the screen for you guys. This is in general the batting stats for the Blue Jays. Colin, I know the Jays have done very well hitting-wise this year, but you have to be happy with the kind of the next step of progression that those young core pieces have taken, and all the hype that has been behind them these last couple of years. They're finally starting to show that this team's going to be dangerous for years to come with this young lineup.
I mean, Vladdy's just a hitter. Vladdy's just a pure hitter. He's not your prototypical slugger. I mean, you're not going to see him strike out a million times a year, right? He's going to go up there and hit 300 and hit 35 to 50 bombs a year, which is incredible to get from a power hitter, right? I think Vladdy will end up hitting in the 2 spot behind Springer when he comes back, even though I like him in the 3, but I just have a feeling they're going to move him up to the 2 spot and put behind Springer and then just unload like 1 and 2. But that's going to be interesting. And also, I saw a stat today, and I was talking to you guys earlier about it. Last year, Vladdy against the changeup, which is for a majority of the pitchers, that's their second pitch. And he batted 167 last year against a changeup. This year, he's batting 285. That's a major improvement. I mean, if you can hit the off speed, you're going to be over 280 like that. You're going to be an elite hitter in the league. I mean, Reece used that with Miguel Cabrera in 2012, right? He destroyed off speed pitches because that's all he faced. And I think Vladdy this year finally figured out how to hit that off speed pitch, because nobody threw him nice pitches. He never gets a fastball. It's all junk, low and outside, everything away. And he's hitting the opposite field. He has 8 home runs out of his 18 to the opposite side of the field, which really stood out to me, because how many opposite field home runs do you see Jose Bautista hit? A big goose egg, probably.
One in that 52 season that he had.
Yeah. So, I mean, he hit 52 home runs, 1 to opposite field.
And it was his last one of the season. It was literally his last home run was an opposite field home run.
So, I mean, there you go, right? Like, when you see Vladdy, the numbers he puts up, what he's putting up right now, and I mean, he's hitting the off-speed pitches, and the weight loss thing for him was massive too. I mean, he can hit that inside pitch and turn on it now, and when he gets that ball inside and turns on it, those are the ones where you see going 445 dead center field over scoreboards in Dunedin, right? That's when you see it, and he's really squaring the ball up well this year. And he's hitting the breaking ball, which is great to see.
And before I move on to Reece, Colin, I know you wanted to mention Marcus Semien too in his first year with the Jays, and kind of, a little bit of a slow start, but he's kind of turned it on the last month or so.
Yeah, Marcus Semien's going to make that move to the 2, Vladdy to 2 spot very tough, because I don't think he can move that. I mean, you got 2 guys right now, and I mean, their record doesn't show it because their pitching's no good, but you got 2 guys that are legit in the MVP race so far for the first half of the year, and Vladdy and Marcus Semien. I mean, Marcus Semien, $18 million at the time for just 1 year. It was kind of questionable, $18 million, but you're getting the $18 million production right now in Marcus Semien, which is great to see. And another one is Randall Grichuk. I think Randall Grichuk makes that move a lot easier when Springer comes back, just because you still have that depth. It really hurts guys like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. if they're not swinging the bat well. I mean, then you got to keep Grichuk in the lineup, right, because he's hitting too good. So that's going to be interesting there. But Marcus Semien, Player of the Month, great to see. He's had a great year so far. He's been that veteran presence for Bo Bichette too, which is huge for Bichette. But yeah, it's good to see Marcus Semien having the year he's having too.
Reece, 3.1 WAR for both Semien and Guerrero. Do you look into the WAR? Like, is WAR like a stat that you really like to see and look into as far as a guy's value towards his team? And just in general, your thoughts on what this Jays lineup is doing right now. It's pretty impressive, even for somebody that's not a fan of the Jays. I can't help but be impressed, and you as well. Can't help but be impressed with what these young kids are doing right now.
Yeah, it's something really amazing, and this is a team that really isn't fully complete yet. I think there's still moves to be made in order for them to actually be a very big World Series contender, and whether that's hitting, whether that's pitching, that's not up to me. I don't get paid a lot of money to make those decisions, so that sounds like a Russ Atkins problem. But yeah, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is just unbelievable. Like Colin said, he's able to hit the breaking ball, and that's just a matter of learning that, hey, you really have to be ready for a fastball, but if you get a breaking ball, you have to have the ability to adjust to it. It's very tough to sit on a breaking ball a lot of the time and be successful, because even if 95's coming at you, you're sitting on a changeup that's getting by you. You're not hitting it. So for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to be able to be hitting the off-speed stuff that well, adjusting off the fastball, is great to see. And yeah, Colin, Marcus Semien, slow start, hitting 294 now. Really worth the money. I know it's only June, but still, Randall Grichuk.
Right now it is.
Yeah, exactly. Randall Grichuk, Bo Bichette, Hernandez, Gurriel. This lineup is top 5's tough. Top 10 in baseball.
Potential top 5 if they're clicking at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, and
just waiting for that.
Yeah, and Kevin Biggio right now in Trenton, if anyone saw his home run, if he comes back into the lineup and raises his average up right now to only 205, but if he can get to that 250 mark, that's just another piece that adds to the puzzle and makes it even tougher to play against this team. And yeah, it's unbelievable what they're doing. It's crazy. So props to them for putting in the work in the off season. And if they can figure out the pitching, then they'd be in a pretty good spot right now.
I know Springer's only played 4 games, Colin, but you look at the rest of the lineup. You have Bichette, Semien, Grichuk, Guerrero, Gurriel, Teoscar Hernandez, Kevin Biggio. What do you think about the bottom part of the lineup and kind of what they're doing with the catchers, with like Alejandro Kirk, Reece McGuire, and Danny Jansen, and then Rowdy Tellez, Joe Panic, and those kinds of guys? Do you think that they need better production from the 8 and 9 spot? Because we know 1 to 7 this lineup is very deadly, but you need those 8 and 9 guys if you want to be known as a top 5 lineup to be able to be dangerous from numbers 1 to 9. So what are you kind of looking at from the bottom of the lineup there and being able to turn it over to the big guys? Do you think that they need to make a move to kind of solidify that at the bottom of the lineup, or do you think that these guys that they have now are going to be the guys that they stick with moving forward and are just going to have to get the job done?
Well, I think it's a Santiago Espinal, Joe Panic type bench when Springer comes back, because then you option Davis back down to Trenton, which I think helps a lot. I mean, Davis only batting 145 right now, so you bring in Springer who can bat 280 plus and get on base as your leadoff man. There's a big upgrade. So in a 10-game span, you probably get 2 more wins with Springer in the lineup over Davis every day than you would with Davis. So there's an upgrade. I think I would go for a pitcher over one of those bottom 3 right now. The only thing I really would wish that they would get better at is the timely hitting and the guys getting on base. In 2015, when the Jays, I feel, were the best spot to be in contention over 16, when I just think they had guys that got on base. I mean, in big times. I mean, Kevin Pillar, sometimes he looked terrible in his at bats, but that odd clutch time you would get on base. Ryan Goins was not a good hitter. He's below average hitter in baseball, and that odd time he'd be able to move a runner over for the top of the order like Josh Donaldson to come up, or Ben Revere who led off, which I thought was a great move, getting a guy that gets on base. Where I think with George Springer, you obviously get a higher valued Ben Revere. It's not a comparison, but you get a big name guy, which is nice to have there. I just think the catching, you got to have an upgrade there. I hope Alejandro Kirk comes back and can hit. I mean, that can hit like we saw last year. I mean, it's tough. He's 22 years old, right? he came from single A right to the majors, which is impossible. I feel like nowadays. I don't like that move at all. But I mean, last year was under the circumstances you had to do it, right? So it'll be interesting. But catcher obviously would be the biggest one, I think, for me to get on base. I don't think you can acquire a catcher at the trade deadline. I think that's kind of tough. The time you learn the pitching as a catcher, there's a good month. So it's August, right? And beginning of September, the time the catching gets in groove with your starters. I think right now I wouldn't be surprised if Ross Atkins is calling teams like Minnesota. Jose Barrios would be a decent starter to get. I mean, that's an upgrade. But overall, I think you're hoping that guys like Ross Stripling, which is a big if, right? Ross Stripling, a guy that he's been inconsistent, I mean, but now his last 3 starts have been quality starts, which is huge for them. And then their next start, Hyun-Jin Ryu, has a rough one. So that's a tough where the consistency's tough with the starting pitching. That's why I think they go pitching over the bottom of the lineup. But we'll see. I like Espinal. I like Panik too. Last year, Panik had timely plays. Panik had timely big hits for them last year, so that'll be interesting as well to see what happens. But I would believe Davis is option, then Springer comes in, and then there's an upgrade. You go from your bottom 3, all of a sudden you get Lourdes Gurriel in your bottom 3 batting 7th when Springer comes back, if everyone were to be bumped down from tonight's lineup. So all of a sudden you got Gurriel 7th. You got Springer in for Davis. Look at the upgrade, right? I think there's 10 more wins on the season with Springer over Davis.
Yeah, so Joe Panik had the walk-off in that torrential downpour game last week. That was an interesting game there.
Right there, clutch hit.
Yeah,
against the bottom of the order. That's what you need.
Against the Miami Marlins, they had a big comeback in that 9th inning. But before we hit break, Reece, I'm going to give you last thoughts on just kind of what we discussed there about the Jays, bottom guys, and if they really need an upgrade at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you always like to upgrade, right? It always looks better, and I as long as you can find a way to manufacture runs, there's no upgrade needed. Like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will eventually hit a streak where he won't hit a home run for 8 or 10 games. It's going to happen. All superstar hitters do it, and so it's a matter of someone else stepping up and taking his spot. It's not a matter of going out and getting another superstar. It's just a matter of the rest of the team stepping up, while Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is like 2 for 20 in his last 5 or 6 games. So it's hard. It really is. I mean, the factor of always being part of Toronto this year, not as much, although you are playing in a minor league park, but there's always that factor of playing for a Canadian team when say you're American and all you want to do is play baseball in an American city. So that you always have to consider that a factor. But if guys can get on base, if guys can manufacture runs by hitting sac flies or hitting ground balls, and then I think you're fine. I don't think there's any upgrade necessary in the lineup.
Yeah, maybe they need to give you guys the call up. Maybe you guys can move some runners over, but
right?
I don't
That's
know.
what I'm saying.
I don't know if that's available. I don't know if they need a
I
left-handed
once got told not to bunt
I wonder if they need a left-handed
in our
catcher.
championship game.
With that said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our commercial break on the show today and come back and discuss the standings, kind of what's going on with the AL and the NL, and kind of where the Jays sit within their division in the AL East that has become very competitive this year, as always, but with a couple teams that we didn't expect. So stay right here. We'll be right back on the Full Count MLB podcast after our commercial break right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving traditional-style Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and their famous chicken wings. Winners of the Reader's Choice Diamond Award, 4 years running from Niagara this week for Best Pizza and Wings in Niagara Falls. Home of the best tray and wing combo in town for the price and quality. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery at 905-374-4400. Make sure to like them on Facebook and view their website for their menu at carmine'spizzeria.ca. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, way too good. As we all adjust to this new world that we're living in today, masks are now mandatory, and Niagara's own Custom PPE is Canada's leading face mask provider. Visit them online at customppe.ca and choose between several mask options with different colors and sizes. Add your organization, company, or team logo so you make your face masks unique. Available to purchase online 24/7 at customppe.ca and shipped within 1 week. They have the best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, and no order is too big or too small. also offering custom floor stickers as well as face and counter shields for your business or workplace. Visit customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your custom or blank face mask today. Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider. Attention job seekers, if you are currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, directly across from the Camisos Plaza. Their free services include resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and all their services are currently provided by appointment only. So give them a call at 905-358-0021 or visit their website at ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final segment of today's Full Count MLB podcast. Brandon Pittle, Reece Dumaney, and Colin Ward back with you here. And gentlemen, let's take a look at, first off, let's get into this quick news here because I know it has a lot of interest for your fantasy league, but also just a sad story here in the Major League Baseball here. A long time, very good player in the league, Marcell Ozuna, was released from jail on a $20,000 bond Monday. This was last week after being charged with aggravated assault by strangulation and battery against his wife. Again, that's no laughing matter, but during his initial appearance in the Fulton County jail, Ozuna was ordered to avoid contact with his wife. He had no comment on as he walked out of the jail. In courts, attorneys said the couple was in the process of a divorce, and he was arrested on a domestic violence charge in Miami a year ago. So, again, you can read the statement up on the screen there on YouTube. But, Reece, I'll start off with you. Just how unfortunate is it for a guy like Marcell Ozuna? He's been a great hitter for a long time with Miami, with St. Louis, and he found another home here in Atlanta and has been doing a solid job for them in their lineup. And just, this is the stuff we saw with Domingo Germán with the Yankees before the season started and his, domestic violence. You don't just have to answer to the fans and your organization, but when you walk into that clubhouse every day, you have to talk to guys that have families and children and wives and that kind of really don't agree with that type of behavior. Obviously, I don't think anybody does or condones it. So just how unfortunate do you think this is for Ozuna? Do you think this is the end of it for him? And if he does come back, just how much is he going to have to earn the respect of his teammates, fans, and the organization, any organization that wants to pick him back up, despite all the great stuff that he does on the field when he's there?
Yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? You look at the clubhouse he's in, and his first baseman is Freddie Freeman. I don't think you see anyone else post more about his family than Freddie Freeman, right? So that's tough to have to go if he ever gets that chance. Should he? That's another topic. We could probably debate that for half an hour, but it's a topic that we shouldn't have to discuss. Because it's something that you look at these athletes, you think they have everything based on the amount of money they make, but obviously players have their own issues off the field and they deal with that themselves and in a way that they see fit. And clearly Marcell Ozuna went way, way, way too far this time. Not saying there was another time, just saying it as is, but from a PR standpoint, I don't think he gets another chance on the field. From a general manager's office standpoint, I still think anyone would love to have him in their clubhouse and in their lineup. It's just whether or not, and I don't know if society has much to play into this, but how much the baseball community and all of the players, if they would accept him back. And there'd be a lot of people that probably won't accept him back to the field. So it's a tough debate, and I hope Marcel gets everything straightened out and gets his head right. But yeah, it's a very bad situation for him.
Colin, we see this a lot in any pro sport, really. We could bring up any sport and it has its issues, but is the juice going to be worth the squeeze for Marcell Ozuna coming back from something like this? And if you were a general manager, would you even want to have, like Reece mentioned, that PR nightmare of having to kind of explain, the good and the good over the bad in the situation, or do you think that this might be the end for him?
Well, yeah, it's over. I think it's over. I mean, he's got to go through a lot of help. I mean, to be able to come back. I mean, there's no way if I'm a GM, I'm signing that. Not 100. That doesn't belong in the sport. It doesn't matter the sport. That doesn't belong anywhere. I mean, a guy like him is probably a role model for a little kid that has his jersey in Atlanta right now, right? Or in St. Louis when he was there. And that cannot fly. That's tough. I mean, you think about it, like when we were little kids, I mean, we'd be at ball games watching our favorite players in any sport with our parents or whatever, and we'd ask about, I mean, that guy, what do you think he's like or whatever? Like, you want to, and then you think the world of these guys, right? And then you see something like that. I mean, it's terrible. It's sickening for the whole sports world, anyone. It's sickening for to hear any of that. It's too bad. It really is. It's too bad that you get a weakness like that to do the thing he did. It's unexcusable, and I hope that and I kind of hope that nobody picks him up, because there's no room in baseball or any sport or anywhere to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss whether, any athlete and if this is acceptable or not. But again, like, you have to be a role model on and off the field. Like you mentioned, those kids wear your jerseys, they go to the games, they follow you on social media. You have to present your way as much as you don't like it, because, you're seen as, more of a performer than a human being. But at the same time, you have to present yourself on and off the field in a good manner, and behavior like that is just should not be acceptable in any sort of workplace, let alone professional sports where you're out in the limelight. Exactly. But with that, we'll move on to kind of better topics here and more enjoyable topics, I guess you could say. And I got the NL and AL standings up on the screen for our YouTube viewers here. And Colin, I know you wanted to touch on, I think it was Chicago and another team very quickly, and just how they're doing.
Yeah, the Cubs are a half a game back. The White Sox, they're in first place, 4 up on Cleveland. I think I said it at the beginning of the year. I think it's a White Sox division. I thought they were going to cruise through there. And right now they're 4 games up. I mean, I think everyone thought Minnesota was going to be that team in the 2 spot, right? And Minnesota being 12 games back.
I did.
Same with me. Yeah, same with me. Same with me. I mean, I didn't think they'd be tied with Detroit at 24 and 35 right now. And once you get over 10 games back, I think it's over, to be honest. You have to think about the amount of games you'd have to lose, and then the teams in front of you would have to lose, and then the teams that you can lose too. So that's a tough situation to be in for Minnesota. So that's why I think Chicago, they got the division. If they just play quality baseball, they got to play about every 10. I like to mark it in 5 games, but in 10 games they'd have to win 7 out of 10 consistently, probably, to be a legit World Series contender right now, just because you really can't cruise through a division, because when you do that, you get to the playoffs, you get knocked out quick. So that's interesting with the White Sox as well. Tampa Bay starting to play really good baseball. 7-3 in their last 10, 2 in a row. Boston, obviously, 5 in a row, coming off a big sweep of the Yankees. But I'm not chirping you. But the Yankees,
they're garbage.
Yeah,
they're garbage. There's nothing more you can say. Don't get me fired up over this, okay, Colin? They are hot garbage, okay? That's all you need to say about the Yankees.
They're going to sign Carlos Correa. That's fine.
Okay, all right. Let's
Where else did Correa go?
Well,
Correa would have signed by now if he wasn't going somewhere else. And the Yankees are going to be the team to pay him.
Okay, why does it have to be
they need someone to hit.
It's a disgrace.
They're going to pay him because they're 2-8 in their last 10. They've lost 4 in a row.
They got swept by the Red Sox.
They got swept to Boston
for the first time at home in a decade.
11 years?
It was either 9 or 11. Regardless, it's embarrassing. But
in my lifetime, I have never saw the Yankees after a bad year. First off, I've rarely saw them have a bad year. But after a bad year, I've never saw them not sign somebody big. So Carlos Correa has his name written all over New York, in my opinion. I mean, if this continues, because the Yankees aren't going to have 2 bad years. I mean, the Jays are getting better. The Red Sox are way better than everybody thought. And Tampa Bay is better than everybody thought, I think. I mean, they're -4 run differential right now for the Yankees. I mean, that's tough. Baltimore's better in the last 10 than New York right now. So that's not acceptable, I mean, for the Yankees. And I had the Yankees going to the ALCS. So it's a surprise for me too. I mean, shout out to Aaron Judge, because Aaron Judge is having a quality year. Aaron Judge is having a quality year for them. But after that, there's a major drop off. The Giancarlo Stanton signing's a tough one right now.
It's completely unacceptable, the batting averages and the on-base percentages for this team. And Aaron Boone is on the hot seat. They don't know how to play situational baseball. It's as simple as that. The Yankees are not getting it done. They're 4th place in the AL East, 31-29 record. It's inexcusable for this team, and they have to get better in all areas. Their pitching was carrying them for a little bit about a couple weeks ago when Kluber had thrown that no-hitter. Now he's on the disabled list, and just the pitching was making up for a lot of the deficiencies on the hitting side. They were unhittable for a while, and now the pitching has come back down to earth, and we've seen how bad the hitting's been. So DJ LeMahieu, that signing, he just hasn't been himself this year at all, and it's been unfortunate. But I want to move on, Reece, here to a team in kind of a division that doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's the NL Central. And I think a lot of people expected when Nolan Arenado got traded to St. Louis that they were just going to be able to run away with this division. And they have done the complete opposite of that. They're sitting third, 31-29. But I think the interesting team is the Chicago Cubs, sitting there in second place, 33-27. After a bad year last year, I know the Brewers are in first, and they've won 9 of their last 10 games. But for a Cubs team, that where people thought that Kris Bryant would be available on the trade market this year, with his pending contract status, do you think there's any way that the Cubs can even trade him at this point or look to trading him when they're currently sitting in second in the NL Central and kind of, I think, exceeding expectations this year? What do you think that they're going to do in that spot if they do stay in second place? Do they still look at moving Kris Bryant, because you'd think that their fans would want them to go for it, but are you looking at the long-term effect of that as well and not being able to get anything for him? Just how tough is that situation for them?
Yeah, it's really tough. You said it perfectly, and I think if the Chicago Cubs are sitting in second place or first place, I think you have to be in the top 2 spots in order for a Kris Bryant trade not to happen. Whereas if, say, you get down to third and fourth, then, yeah, you could see it happen easily. But with them half a game back in Milwaukee right now, with the new Wrigleyville jerseys coming out, by the way, they're okay. They're okay.
Really? I love them.
They're all right. But, yeah, you have to be in a position where you don't think you have a chance to win a World Series. And whether the Cubs feel like second place, they don't have a chance to win a World Series, then okay, that's their opinion. They think that it's their team. Trade them, go for it. But I think if you're a Cubs fan, you look at it as, we went 100 and some odd years without a World Series. If we have a chance to win another one, I think we go for it. And that's where the buying talks start to happen. You look around the market and say, all right, who can we go out and buy and add to our lineup, add to our starting staff? Max Scherzer's available. A lot of his name's been thrown around to a few places. So maybe the Cubs go after him to try and go after another World Series title. It's just, with Kris Bryant, you have to be in a position where you are 100% sure that you are not going to win the World Series this year.
I mean, again, like we know, it's the middle of June almost, and we kind of see what teams are going to be the contenders, which teams are going to be buyers and sellers. And the Cubs, you would have expected this year that they would have been sellers, but they're, like you mentioned, exceeding expectations. They're sitting second place, but like you mentioned, do you want another 100-year, layoff? Yeah. And I'm not saying that Kris Bryant is going to be, the decision whether they end up winning a World Series in the next 20 years or not. But if they can get a quality trade, that could set them up for, a generation here for the next crop of great Cubs players here. And we saw that the Gleyber Torres trade didn't work out well for them. I mean, it kind of did short term. They won a World Series with Aroldis Chapman, but deciding to get rid of Gleyber instead of oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on the outfielder that is no longer there. It is Kyle Schwarber. Sorry, they decided to keep Kyle Schwarber, trade Gleyber Torres. We obviously know that didn't work. But Colin, what do you think of just the Cubs and in general, when you're a team like that who's exceeding expectations, you have a pending UFA player who is a very good player. Do you keep him to go for that playoff run, or do you make the better long-term investment, which is going to be hard to show the fan base a short-term, win in that scenario?
Well, Reece, like you said, I mean, even if you're in a wild card spot, doesn't mean you're going to win a World Series. I mean, there's pretenders for a reason, right? The Toronto Maple Leafs are pretenders. They beat out in the first round every year. But
Oof.
I think the big thing is, as I swear, but I think the big thing is, I mean, Kris Bryant, free agent. Javier Baez, free agent. Zach Davies, free agent. Jock Peterson, free agent. Jake Arrieta, free agent. Wilson Contreras, free agent. Ian Happ, free agent. Those are 7 guys that are free agents at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can trade a top 3 prospect when 7 guys to that magnitude who are key guys to your roster are free agents. I wouldn't. It's a tough situation because they're in it, but 7 guys, right? And you're gonna lose. If you do it, you're gonna lose them for nothing. Because look what happened with the Jays, right? They had to make those moves. Jose Bautista, right? Edwin Encarnacion, they had to make those moves. Josh Donaldson. That's a tough spot for Chicago. Scott Boras, his client's Kris Bryant. Have you ever saw Boras take a deal to stay with a team?
No.
You rarely see that. Yeah, that's not happening. So I don't know. I mean, obviously Arrieta's gone. He's 35. He'll be gone. But Contreras is one of the best catchers in baseball. Jock Peterson, you just got a deal. I don't think you want to lose those guys. Ian Happ is a utility guy for the Cubs, a super utility guy. He plays everywhere. He's an everyday player for them. High leverage guy. I mean, great versatile player for them. And I don't think that's a guy you want to lose. So I don't think you can do it because I think the guys you have now, you're kind of in the position to retool. And if you make the move, like if you make a Kris Bryant move at the deadline, you add team's top 2 prospect to your prospects pool. All of a sudden you're better. I mean, you look at the Jays prospects. I'm not saying the Jay Bryant to the Jays deal or anything, but can you imagine if like a Groschreds or someone got traded in a Kris Bryant deal? I mean, it would probably end up being close to a guy like Austin Martin, but could you imagine a top prospect going to Chicago for Kris Bryant? All of a sudden, 2 years down the road, you're back in it, looking for a World Series. So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, but I don't see anybody giving up, a top prospect for a rental in Kris Bryant unless he's gonna, commit long term. But again, we saw it with Chapman.
Agency, eh?
I mean, the Cubs made that move a couple years ago with Chapman, so
exactly.
It could happen. But again, as somebody, if I was putting myself in the GM chair there, I don't know if that would a decision that I would be able to make.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our last part of the show today, Reece, I want to get your thoughts on the AL East. And just the Jays are sitting 3rd right now, 30-27. The Red Sox, who had a plus 2,200 odd to win the AL East this year, are massively exceeding expectations this year. They're sitting 2nd, 37-23. I don't think anybody expected that for the Red Sox this year, as they're still kind of trying to rebuild their way back up, but they've gotten a lot of contributions, and I think that in part to the Jays and Red Sox success has been the Yankees kind of faltering here and falling to 4th place. The Orioles are quite a ways back, but for the Yankees to be sitting 4th right now as a team that was projected to win the AL East is pretty unacceptable. The Rays are leading it right now. It really looks like a 3-horse race, and if the Yankees can kind of figure it out, you've got 4 quality teams in the AL East this year that maybe we didn't expect coming into this year.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Boston, as we speak right now, they're getting destroyed. Of course, we're recording the night before, but they're getting destroyed by Houston right now. But, yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay, we expected to be good. New York, we expected to be good. And Toronto, we expected to be
decent.
Good or
average.
Decent, whatever word you want to use, fighting for a wild card spot, I guess you could say. But, yeah, we thought the NL East was very intriguing to begin the year, which it still is. The last place team, Miami Marlins, only 7.5 back. You're not out of it quite just yet if you're them, but yeah, it's odd. It really is odd. Everyone counted the Red Sox out, saying they had no chance. I was probably one of them, but JD Martinez he showed up the first 2 months. Like JD Martinez, complete bounce back start to what he did last year, and I think that was the biggest key. Is if JD Martinez was going, then I think the rest of the team goes. Obviously, you got Xander Bogaerts, who's still one heck of a player. Alex Verdugo, who I think is a really good outfielder. He can play really good defense. He can hit. So he's not Mookie Betts. I still think that trade was a little one-sided, but Alex Verdugo is still a quality player. And they even have Kike Hernandez, who can chip in from time to time, right? So for the Red Sox, it's just everyone counted them out, and they're just saying, hey, we're still major leaguers. We can still play this game pretty well. So they've done that very well so far throughout this season. Maybe we'll see a drop-off. I don't know. The Jays and Yankees will have to get hot in order for the Red Sox to kind of fall down a bit. But right now, you're laughing if you're the Red Sox because you're in the best position that you could possibly be right now.
Yeah, or anybody that put a flyer bet on the Boston Red Sox this year. They're looking at a nice payday. But Colin, we're going to move into the last part of today. We only got a few minutes left, and I'm going to pull up for the YouTube viewers here the home run leaders in the MLB, and the main thumbnail of today's video. You've got Vladdy Jr. sitting there in first place for the Jays at 18 as we record this episode. You have Jesse Winker, the Western New York product from the Cincinnati Reds, quietly with 17 home runs. Obviously,
really good year.
Obviously, Fernando Tatis and Ronald Acuna Jr., two of the great young stars in the game, both with 17 home runs. And you've even got Garcia and Ohtani's there for the Angels as well. So you got a couple of big-name guys and a couple of guys that wouldn't get, as much notoriety. But it really seems like a home run derby so far this year, Colin. And what are you thinking of the guys at the top here? Is it really going to be a race to the final, maybe couple games of the season here? Or is somebody going to try to pull away?
Well, every night you see one of these guys in the top 5 hit a bomb, so it's pretty cool to see that race. It's going to be fun. I hope it stays the same with that many guys in contention to win a home run crown because, it's fun. Last week of the season, you got like 6 guys tied. You don't know who's going to win, but chances of that are very unlikely. I think Jesse Winker's a guy that could get extremely hot. He's hot right now, but I think he's a guy that could be on the trade block. Cincinnati, a game under 500 right now. There's a guy you got to put on the trade block if you plan on selling, or they might stay neutral, Cincinnati, because they went out and got Castellanos and they wanted to build a competitive roster. So far it's failed for the Reds, but Jesse Winker's a guy that could possibly be on the trade block. I've loved his game this year. He's having quality at bats, which is nice. Another one that's hitting the breaking ball now too, which is huge. Once you hit the breaking ball, that's the difference between the good and the elite hitters. If you can hit the pitcher's top 3 pitches, you're gonna own baseball. You're gonna be all over the place. And Vladdy is doing that. Winger's doing that. Tatis is just a freak. Tatis, he misses some time, comes back and misses nothing. I know. I'm not saying I hope that's gonna happen, but Kevin Biggio, if he's a guy that can come back and hit 50 points higher and his batting average go from 205 to 255, that's huge for the Jays as well, and gives Vladdy protection as well. And Ronald Acuna Jr. is another one who's he's a stud. He's a stud. These guys are so good for baseball. Garcia as well in Texas, I think, is the one that's really come out of nowhere because no one talked about Texas at the beginning of the year, right? Nobody is as a team. But there's their bright spot, I think, this year by far for the Rangers. And
you look at Boston with Devers there. I think that's a big reason to their success there. He's obviously got an on base percentage of, I think it's 342, and he's hit 15 home runs, 48 RBIs. So that's obviously been a big jump for Boston. But
the show it.
Yep, Ohtani. Reece, I'll give you the final word on this. Just you have guys like Guerrero, Tatis, Acuna, Ohtani. Do you think that's good for the game of baseball that those guys that you market around are the top guys right now that are battling for, the most mainstream title, which is the home runs? Obviously, people who don't enjoy watching baseball, but they enjoy watching a home run or going to a game and wanting to see home runs is usually what the casual fans want to do. Do you think this is good for baseball? Obviously, we had it in the steroid era where, guys were hitting, 70 home runs. I don't want us to go back to a steroid era, but the point I'm trying to make here is that we have the top young players in the league at the top of the home run list. You have, 3, 4 of the top 6 there, and if a couple other guys could get hot, you'd have really almost all the main stars that are the most mainstream guys that people know around baseball. Just, do you think this is good that those guys are kind of the ones carrying the load right now and being in such a tight home run race for this coming all the way to the end? Will it be good for viewability for the rest of the season?
I think so, because the top 3 guys are international players. They're not Americans. I think that is absolutely huge. Now, baseball's already big in the Dominican Republic. It's already big in Venezuela. There's already huge amounts of baseball fans there. But when you have guys who aren't from the States leading these categories, it gets more people involved around the globe. And I think all sports, they want to do that. They want to be able to have fans from all across the world enjoy this experience of watching Major League Baseball, which 95% of those international fans won't ever see a game in person. They'll just, whether it's with the package or however they get the games. But to have guys on the international stage, like Shohei Ohtani, for example, keep going down the list.
Japan's going crazy over him.
Yeah, exactly. It's great for the
Masters
game of baseball. Yeah, 100%. So I think internationally, this is great. I'm sure the Americans will have something to say about it because they'd like to be leading the home run race, but like everyone would, it's not a shot at anyone. But internationally, this is great having Vlad Guerrero Jr., Ronald Acuna Jr., and that's hilarious, and Fernando Tatis Jr., top three.
Bunch of juniors taking after their fathers and making them very proud. But with that said, I think that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Full Count MLB podcast. And it's going to be really interesting to see the home run race come down to those international players. And I agree with Reece that I think it's going to be good for the game of baseball as a whole, as far as internationally known, and kind of getting more eyes on it like we see with other international sports like soccer and things like that. I think it's just better for the sport. The Americans, obviously with it being in America, you'd want to see the Americans as well, but I'm sure they'll catch up at some point. But right now, these young sluggers from the Dominican and from South America, they are really, carrying the load here for Major League Baseball and its fans right now to enjoy. So with that said, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Full Count MLB podcast right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the beautiful Niagara region. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the show. My name is Brandon Caputo. You can follow me right underneath below on the YouTube portion of the episode at Capoots13_AGM. And as always, you can follow my co-host, firstly, Colin Ward. You can follow him on Twitter at ColinWard_14. And again, Colin, the president of the Left-Handed Catchers Association. Are you still taking applications?
100%, always, 24/7.
And former
like
technical...
a Walmart Supercenter open 24/7.
Well, by the time this episode, people will be listening to it, hopefully you can sell those non-essential items again, and we can buy stuff like baseball gloves and other great things at our big box stores. But other than that, you can follow Reece Dumaney, the former technical producer at TSN 1150 and president of the Lou Whitaker for Hall of Fame fan club at Reece Dumaney. Reece, pleasure as always, my friend.
Yeah, it was a fun week, man.
Yep, and for sure, yeah, it was a fun week, especially when your Tigers swept the Yankees last week. Yeah. So you can get a lot of laugh out of that, and I won't blame you. So a big thank you to all of our great sponsors help put us on, support the network, keeping the show on the air. Make sure you're checking them out and telling them that the Armchair GM sent you. And finally, to you viewers out there and baseball fans and baseball junkies for listening along for this episode. And once again, this is the June 9th edition of the Full Count MLB podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network by sports fans for sports fans. We'll see you guys next week.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.